Thank you. Thank you. Leave it to a right-wing radio talk show host to really get you inflamed. Now, I didn't say terminated, Dan. I said I would have relieved her of her post. Now, I'm glad to see that we had prayer to begin with. You can do it as long as you don't do it in the school, so be careful where you're praying. You can pray in the Senate. We pray every day. We have a prayer to begin this day. In fact, there was a famous chaplain back in right around the turn of the last century named Edward Hale, and he was asked, "Do you pray for the Senate?" And he said, "I've met the senators, and frankly, I pray for the people." There's some truth to that. There's definitely some truth to that. Now, some people think this is all, just so much fun campaigning, but sometimes it's not. We'd rather be, home with our family or home with our kids. And I'm not saying y'all aren't great, but sometimes we miss things by being out on the road. When I was campaigning, I sometimes ran into some strange occurrences, to say the least. One day I'm campaigning in Litchfield, Kentucky. This is after campaigning for about a year, and a woman comes up to me, and she grabs me by the hair and said, "Oh, I just wanted to see if it was a toupee or not." And I said, "Hey, lady, I'm just having a bad hair day. Give me a break." So I thought I was done with that, and I thought, people, they're still not wondering if I'm wearing a toupee, are they? So I go to Israel about a month ago, and I'm at the West Wall praying, and it's a truly an emotional thing. And I've got a yarmulke on, and I don't always read the comments. So if you write nasty comments about me, I won't always read them. But I did read the comments in the newspaper. There's a story, and what's the first comment? "Yeah, there he is in Israel with that yarmulke tacked to his rug." So the one thing, if you don't remember anything else about this speech, you may not think I'm genuine, but my hair is genuine, all right? We eat 3 times a week with the Republican caucus. Sometimes it's kind of an echo chamber. It's all the Republican senators, and unfortunately there's 2 less than there was last year. So there's 45 of us, and we eat in a small room. We get to know each other pretty well. Sometimes it's an echo chamber. If you're in there saying, "I'm for the Second Amendment," you're getting slapped on the back and everybody loves you. But go down the list a little bit, and it's not always such a consensus. So once you get to the Fourth Amendment, you're not getting everybody. If you think they ought to have a warrant before they take your papers, or if you think they ought to have a warrant before they look at your visa bill, most of you probably do not realize this. For about 40 years now, your visa bill is open pickings for anybody that wants to look at it because it's held by a third party. We gave up on the Fourth Amendment once we gave our bank records, and I think that's wrong. Think about your life today. If you're like me, I spend almost everything on my Visa card. I probably don't have $1 in my pocket right now because I use my Visa card. But everything's on it. You can tell whether I go to a doctor, whether I see a psychiatrist, which I don't yet. You can tell whether I drink, which I haven't yet this evening, so you're safe there. You can tell whether I gamble, what magazines I read, who I associate with, all by looking at my Visa bill. For goodness sake, shouldn't you have to accuse me of a crime before looking at my Visa bill? So we're sitting in there, and we're talking about something called indefinite detention. It's our caucus of 47 at that time, and the discussion goes on, and I raise my hand, and I say, well, the Sixth Amendment says you get a right to a trial by jury. We give it to the most despicable people in our country. If tonight you leave here, or you find, or someone is accused in Chicago of something horrible that we all want to punish them for, murder, rape, armed robbery, killing, we give them a trial and a jury. It's something to assess guilt. It's important to us. It's been going on since about the year 725 AD out of English common history, jury trials. So it came forward that they had this thing called the Defense Authorization Bill, and it said that you could indefinitely detain specifically an American citizen with an accusation. So on the floor, I said to my friend, and he is my friend, we don't always agree, but I consider him to a friend, to Senator McCain, I said, does this mean you could send an American citizen to Guantanamo Bay with no trial ever, just by an accusation? He says, yes, if they're dangerous. The problem is that's what a jury is for. That's what an accusation is for. We fought the Revolutionary War because we didn't like the king applying general warrants. A general warrant was a warrant that didn't have anybody's name on it. They just went into anybody's house. These are the Fifth, the Sixth, the Third, all these amendments. It's not just about the Second Amendment. But why I'm so proud of this day is I was by myself. Those who agreed said nothing, and those who disagreed often were very vocal, but one senator stood up and supported me, and that was Senator Mark Kirk. And I didn't know him very well at the time. I didn't know him very well at the time, but he was very eloquent. He was very much to the point. He actually lifted his copy of the Constitution and went and read through it. So we can't be so fearful of people. I hate terrorists as much as anybody. I'm all for killing them in the battlefield, killing them around the world if they want to attack us. And yet, we can't just say that we're going to let drones drop on Americans in this country. And Mark Kirk stood there and understood this. And what you need to understand about this battle over the drones is we're not talking about somebody with a grenade launcher on their shoulder. If you are attacking anyone, lethal force can always be used against you around the world, any battlefield, and in the U.S. But it wouldn't be the military, and it wouldn't be the CIA in the U.S. It would be the FBI and the police, and it is different. It's important. We've had rules for 150 years. The military does not operate in the United States. Neither does the CIA. And you have to understand that some of these people being killed by drones are being killed in their house or walking along the pavement or in a cafeteria. I mean, I've said a lot of bad things about big government. I don't want them coming to my house with a drone. But the thing is that this is an important concept. So we're fighting this over the Brennan nomination right now. I won't be able to stop him forever, but I am fighting in the committee, and it's an interesting coalition. I have people on the left, Ron Wyden, who I consider to be a good liberal. And then I have people on the right as well supporting me. And we have a coalition right now stopping his nomination. We cannot beat him. We cannot defeat him forever. But we're asking the White House, will you at least acknowledge the law? I mean, this is such a simple answer, no, that I can't believe that they won't do it. But when Brennan was asked about this, about the drone strikes, he says there is no geographic limitation. So your obvious question is, does that mean the U.S. border doesn't stop you? Does that mean you're going to bomb somebody at a cafe in Houston? You're not going to go pick them up and arrest them? I mean, we can have bad people in our country, but we should arrest them. We can't just kill people without having any kind of process. And he says no geographic limitation. He did say, oh, it has to be an imminent threat, but it doesn't have to be immediate. Now, only a bunch of lawyers could say imminent is not immediate. So the president finally has to respond. He's out at Google campus a couple weeks ago, and the president finally has to respond. They ask him a direct question. Mr. President, can you strike with a drone and kill an American citizen at home? And he says, well, we haven't so far. That's not that encouraging. And he says, well, we have no intention to. Well, that's like saying, I haven't broken the Second Amendment yet, and I have no intention to. Well, I mean, can't it be a little bit stronger? I will not break the Constitution. I will not kill Americans without a trial. Now, I did have a couple of questions for Secretary Clinton, and I've still got a few more. How much time? Do I have time to ask her a few more questions, Dan? The first question, here's the first question. Where in the hell were the Marines? You know what her response is? Oh, the Marines are only there to protect the paper. And I said, I've met Marines. Marines aren't there just to protect paper. But apparently that's the State Department official policy. Marines are not there to protect the people. They're there to protect the paper. And I said, well, isn't there a difference between the embassy in Libya or the consulate in Benghazi and the embassy in Paris? Aren't they a little bit different? Maybe the rules shouldn't be the same. She said, well, you know, I just don't have time to read all my cables. I get 1 million cables a year. And I said, well, you know, I don't expect you to read every cable from Estonia or Bulgaria, but from Libya, yes, I do expect you to have time to read every cable. And when they ask you repeatedly for more security, it is inexcusable that you didn't help those people. And so she says, well, you didn't give me enough money. And I said, the hell we didn't. We gave you, let's see, what did you spend money on? 3 days after they denied the DC-3, a plane that could help ferry people around the country to get them out, you know what they did? She approved $100,000 for an electrical charging station for the ambassador in Vienna, because he wants to show off to his buddies in Western Europe how much he believes in climate change, and he's got electric volt. Oh, you also paid for that. The car subsidized $250,000 per car, but we had to put a special charging station in for him because they didn't have that. $100,000 for that. 3 days after they denied the request for security help. So the summer goes on, and they say they don't have enough money. They spent $300,000 on dog kennels in Iraq. They spent another $100,000 on, and no personal disrespect to our Indian American supporters, to send Indian American comedians to India to promote our culture. That I don't see as a real, primary function of our State Department. So then we get to the middle of August, and they send a plea, keep the security team in place. We've got to have help. No answer. We didn't send them any help. And so when she says, and her defenders say, well, you're being unfair to her. Does anybody remember Mogadishu? Anybody remember Black Hawk Down? You know what happened to Les Aspin? He was the Secretary of Defense, and the request came for months and months in advance that we need more armored personnel. We need more this. We need more that. He didn't do anything. He didn't get them any of the things they requested. And you know what happened to him? He was forced to resign. And that's exactly what Hillary Clinton should have done. We had a report about this. So they have an investigation. It was done very thoroughly, and they came up with like 64 recommendations, all of them good. All of them should have been thought of by any reasonable type of manager or leader in advance of this. But they come back and they missed one thing completely. I don't think the embassy in Libya is the same as the embassy in Paris. I think that there's no way you should have an embassy in Libya, or probably Somalia, or probably Yemen, or probably a half a dozen other countries, unless it's under the military control. We had an embassy in Baghdad, and it's been under military control. It may have finally transformed, but for years and years, generals and colonels and people who knew how to set up a perimeter did it. We can't send people into harm's way and just say, oh, you know who your protection is? The February 17th militia? You know what they did? First shots rang out, they ran the other way. There was nobody there. In fact, one of them was on the phone, they think may have been informing the other people it's a good time to attack. It's not, when Hillary Clinton travels the world, she doesn't travel with the February 17th militia guarding her. So we have to do a better job than that. Now, you've heard a lot about this sequester, and the president lines up a bunch of policemen and firemen behind him and says they're all going to lose their job. Can someone bring him back to a civics class and instruct him that 98% of their salaries, and it really should be 100%, but 98% of their salaries are put down with your local taxes. If you need more firemen out here, I'm all for fire protection. If you need more, you will have to pay a little more in your taxes, but we can't just print up the money in Washington. But he's being dishonest to say they're going to lose their jobs. They're not going to lose their jobs. Even your teachers. We have a lot of federal involvement in school. 95% of all education is still funded by your local taxes. It's scaremongering. It's inexcusable, and it shows signs that he doesn't really know how to lead this country. Now, a lot of people say, woe is me, how could we ever cut? We've just cut to the bone. There's nothing left to cut. We haven't even started. Just not rehiring the people who retire. There's somewhere between 60 and 100,000 people who retire each year from the federal government. That's $6.5 billion a year. I gave the president this suggestion. You know when he took it? 2 days ago. When did we vote on the sequester? A year and a half ago. So he's just not doing his job. Now, federal workers make 16% more, and I think work 16% less than private workers. If you were to pay them the same as private workers, that's $32 billion. You're really at what the sequester is. It's about $44 billion next year is the real sequester, if you want to know what it is. How else could we save money? How about competitive contracts? We still give out government contracts with one bid. If you had competitive contracts, that's $10 billion. How about competitive wages? Why should we pay $60 an hour for a carpenter when the real wage is $25 an hour? We could have competitive wages that we pay. That saves about another $9 billion. Why do they have to go to $1 million conference in Las Vegas? Why do we spend $9 billion on travel. Cut travel budget by 25%. That's another $2 billion. Foreign aid. I frankly don't think that countries that are burning our flag and chanting death to America deserve one penny. I asked Secretary Kerry this when he came up for a nomination. I said, look, is Pakistan our friend or not our friend? We've given them $7.5 billion. The doctor over there, Shakil Afridi, who helped us to get bin Laden, is in jail for the rest of his life. I said, will you at the very least make their aid contingent upon freeing Dr. Afridi? And he said no. He said he would give him sternly worded request to release him. They're not going to do that. They only understand the purse strings. And it's foolish of us to give money to a country that disrespects us like that. Now, whenever they say it's been cut to the bone, I like to point out a few things that they may have missed. $325,000 last year for a robotic squirrel. Now, you would ask, why would you need a robotic squirrel? All right, if you're studying whether a rattlesnake will strike a squirrel when the squirrel's not wagging their tail, it's hard to get a real squirrel to volunteer not to wag its tail. But fear not, your money has developed a robotic squirrel, and I can tell you with surety, the answer is yes, indeed, the rattlesnake will strike the squirrel if it's not wagging its tail. $325,000. $100,000 for the albino squirrel park. My question is, how do you get the albino squirrels to stay in the park? And I like albino squirrels. I think they're good luck. We have them in my neighborhood, but it's like we have to have a special park for them. They're in my trees in my backyard. Turtle tunnels. $3 million for turtle tunnels. Now, what is a turtle tunnel? You probably know about set-asides for things. Set-asides for road construction. 10% of all road construction can go into beautification. So one of the beautifications they did in Florida, turtle tunnels. Now, I still can't figure this one out either. So there's a sign telling the squirrel to go through the tunnel and not across the road. I don't know how that works. If any of you have college-age kids and they're still at home, or they're past college age and they're still at home, these government studies are perfect for you. It can be difficult to qualify. This one was you get to go to Hawaii. You get a $5,000 stipend. And this is the clincher. You have to like food. The project was to develop a menu for Mars. In case we go to Mars, or when we go to Mars, you have to have a menu. So these college kids studied it for $500,000, and you know what they came up with? Pizza. Now, you hear daily, if you turn the news on, that we need to compromise. And I'm not against compromise. There's always working with two sides to try to find some way of doing it. But we shouldn't let the other side define what the compromise is. So we have a real problem as a country. We're spending $1 trillion we don't have every year. We've added $6 trillion to the debt in the last 4 years. But be thankful the president saved you $2 trillion, because he was planning on adding $8 trillion, and he only added $6 trillion. So he saved you $2 trillion. It's absurd. The things he can say, and people look at him with a straight face and don't question that. He cut the deficit by $2 trillion. That's malarkey. How can he say that? How can anybody possibly let him get away with it? But there does have to be a compromise. But the compromise isn't raising taxes. One, it won't work. You raise tax rates, you may well get less revenue. We're not going to know for about a year with these new rates whether we get more revenue or not. But you can get more revenue by lowering rates. It's happened repeatedly throughout our history. The George Bush tax cuts in 2001, 2003, we lowered rates, we got more revenue. Guess what? The rich people paid more, a higher percentage. The tax code's becoming more progressive, even with lower rates. We've got plenty of revenue. We had plenty of revenue coming in until something happened. In 2007, 2008, we went into a terrible recession. After the Bush tax cuts go in place, revenue goes up, and it also stays steady as a percentage of GDP. It goes down when we go into a recession. We have this huge economic bust. That's why there's not revenue. It's starting to come back now. But the bottom line is we should not give up as a party. We should not give up and say, well, yes, we'll just go ahead and give him a little bit, even though we know in our mind it's a bad thing to raise taxes. But there can be a compromise. To me, the compromise is a different one. It's on the spending side of the ledger. What we have to acknowledge is that Republicans, that's most of us here in this group, who believe that national defense is important, that it's probably the number one priority of the federal government, that it is constitutional and that we need to do it, but we need to acknowledge that not every dollar spent is wisely spent or sacred. We need to acknowledge that there is room for savings in the military budget. And likewise, the Democrats need to acknowledge the same on their side of the ledger. There is room and definitely room for cutting on the domestic programs. But if you look at just the discretionary programs, that's where the sequester is, you can eliminate 100% of them forever, and you still don't balance the budget. You have to look at entitlements. That's 2/3 of your budget. Until you do that, you're not serious, and we're not serious. But we shouldn't be afraid of this. I ran for office and said, we're living longer. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's not Republicans' fault. It's not Democrats' fault. There was a whole bunch of kids. It's your damn grandparents. They had too many damn kids after the war. And now they're all retiring. And then the next generation didn't have enough kids. It's a demographic problem. We're living longer. We just have to delay the age for the next generation just a little bit. 2 months a year over about 20 years fixes 2/3 of the Social Security problem. I think you have to do means testing also, which means people like myself and many in this room have done well, you're going to get a little bit less Social Security. Not taking it away from you. You just get a couple $100 less. You got other pensions. These are people who are well off. I think we can do that. We can do that in Medicare. You need more than that in Medicare. That only fixes 1/3 of the Medicare problem. So you've got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, but we can do it if we stick together. But we have to believe in something. We have to put candidates forward who can energize the vote. We need to put candidates forward who can be competitive in Illinois again, in California again, New York, New England. We need to not give up and be minus 180 electoral votes when we start. If we can do that, if we can believe in ourselves, believe in our message, believe in our founders, believe in our founding documents, if we can do those things, I see no limit to what we can do. I see no limit to what the greatness that is still in store for us. If we can believe in something, if we can move forward and say, you know, we're not beaten, which in Cook County is important to say that. Everybody repeat after me. We are not beaten. It's been a real privilege to be here tonight. It's been a privilege to be in the U.S. Senate. If nothing ever else happens to me, I've really enjoyed being a mix and a part of the debate. I continue on trying to mix it up. Even this week, we will not let Brennan go without a fight. I would conclude by saying one thing, though. Until we reach out to all various groups, African American, Indian American, Asian American, Latin American, until we do that, we are shrinking and we are going to be a permanent minority party. Now, this isn't to say it can't change, but we have to do something differently. We do have to reach out. We have to go. We have to show up. We need to talk about the great and rich history we have of emancipation, of voting rights, of civil rights that all came from Republicans. We need to remember and let others remember that in 1930, 99.5% of all African Americans were Republicans. We can regain that again. We need to talk about economic opportunity. We need to talk about school choice. In Cook County, you need to talk about some of the corruption of the other party. There's all kinds of ways, but we can't give up. We need to fiercely fight because what we were founded upon, the liberty that we all cherish is too precious to give up. Thank you very much.